When you think about the American Civil War, you probably picture massive armies clashing on battlefields like Gettysburg, right? But what if I told you the real revolution, the one that would shape global warfare for the next century, wasn't happening on land at all? It was happening at sea. Let's get into it.
See, while all those famous land battles were raging, something else was unfolding on the water, something quieter maybe, but way more radical.
This conflict became a sort of high-stakes laboratory for brand new technologies and strategies that completely rewrote the rules of naval combat, forever. All right, so let's start by just wrapping our heads around how massive this transformation at sea actually was. The sources we're looking at don't mince words. They say these battles changed the very foundations of naval warfare. We're not just talking about a few new ships, we're talking about a fundamental shift in how humanity fought on the oceans.
I mean, just look at this list of firsts. It's wild. You've got the first ever battle between warships plated in iron, the first time a submarine actually managed to sink an enemy ship, the first use of torpedoes. It was this incredible, super fast explosion of military tech that seemed like it came straight out of science fiction for the 1860s.
But before all these crazy new weapons started clashing, the Union had this big, overarching strategy. It was a plan designed to slowly, patiently, and completely strangle the Confederacy. And the heart of that strategy was the Union blockade. The whole idea was pretty simple, really. Use the North's much bigger navy to seal off the entire southern coastline. No ships in, no ships out. Choke off their supplies, their economy, their entire ability to wage war. So the goals were pretty clear, but man, were they ambitious. First, stop all the supplies. Second, make sure no European powers could sneak in and help the South. And third, use that control of the water to move Union troops and gear wherever they needed to go, especially on major rivers like the Mississippi.
Of course, you can't try to put a whole country in a stranglehold and not expect a fight. To try and break this blockade, the Confederacy unleashed a totally radical new weapon, one that would make naval history.
And this is where we get one of the most famous showdowns in naval history. On one side, you have the Union's USS Monitor, this bizarre-looking ship they called a cheese box on a raft, and on the other, the Confederates' CSS Virginia, a huge, menacing iron monster they built from the wreckage of a captured Union ship.
For hours, these two things just blasted away at each other. But their iron armor was so tough that the cannonballs were literally just bouncing off. You can just imagine the incredible clang as these massive shots hit and did absolutely nothing. It was a stalemate like no one had ever seen.
Now here's the key takeaway. The battle itself was a draw, right? But its impact? It was a revolution. In a single afternoon, every single wooden navy in the entire world became obsolete. You can practically hear the panic in London and Paris as admirals realized their giant fleets were now just floating firewood. But hey, cool new technology wasn't everything. The Confederacy's ironclad was scary, but it couldn't break the blockade on its own. For the Union's Anaconda plan to really work, they needed to land a decisive, knockout punch somewhere else. And that punch landed in April of 1862. The target? New Orleans, the biggest city and the most important port in the entire Confederacy.
The Union admiral, David Farragut, did something most people thought was impossible. He decided to just sail his fleet right past two massive Confederate forts guarding the Mississippi River. He smashed through the smaller Confederate fleet waiting for him and basically took the city without a huge fight.
And you really can't overstate how huge this was. The sources are crystal clear. Losing New Orleans was a fatal blow. It wasn't just losing a city. It was like severing the main artery of the Southern economy. They never truly bounced back from it. So these big, famous battles, they were really just the headline acts in a much broader story of insane, rapid-fire innovation that completely redefined war at sea. I mean, think about this for a second. In just a few short years, you get the first use of naval torpedoes, which were basically underwater mines, a terrifying new weapon. You have the raw, brutal power of an ironclad literally ramming another ship to sink it. And of course, the incredible story of the H.L. Hunley, this hand-cranked submarine that actually managed to sink an enemy ship before tragically sinking itself.
So when you pull back and look at the timeline, you see this direct line. The lessons learned at Hampton Roads and in other battles didn't just stay in America. Oh no, they kicked off a massive global arms race, with every major world power scrambling to ditch their wooden ships for new, powerful fleets of iron and steel.
All of this kind of leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? Back then, the ironclad and the submarine were unthinkable, game-changing technologies. So what are the unthinkable technologies of our time? Things like drones, artificial intelligence, cyber warfare that are quietly rewriting the rules of conflict right now, right under our noses.